BBC Southern Counties Radio.
It's 11 minutes past 9 o'clock. Now, my 9 o'clock guest today is someone we've spoken to many times on BBC Southern Counties Radio. It's Stefan Novak. Now, over the last few years, we've followed the story of Stefan and his wife, Lynn. Lynn was battling with cancer, but also battling with the NHS to receive the cancer drugs that would help her to stay alive. Sadly, Lynn lost her battle in February of this year. It's been a hard journey for you, I know. And I know this is hard actually coming onto the radio even now, isn't it?
Yep.
But thank you for doing that.
No problem, Neil.
And good for you. For those people who need reminding, just sort of take us back to Lynn's struggle to get the drugs she needed then.
Well, it all started back in November 2004 when she was diagnosed, and she was diagnosed, of course, with bowel cancer. And she got the NHS treatment that she needed, but after being on irinotecan and oxaliplatin and being on the NHS at Guildford County Hospital, after about 2 years, the drugs that the NHS were offering decided that they didn't want to work on her body anymore. And also by then the cancer had spread to her liver, and by Christmas 2005, she was told by her oncologist that she'd got about 6 months to live, because the treatment the NHS were offering, there was nothing else left they could offer that they were prepared to pay for. So in Christmas 2005...
and it did seem to do some good for Lynn. Of course, the trouble is, money be whether or not the doctors think that it is significantly good enough to actually sort of spend the money on it. And so that was the problem, wasn't it? Trying to get the NHS to actually pay for the investing.
And because she was told she only had 6 months, we then said, OK, what about private treatment? And, we were told costs and what we would have to do. And we said, well, we don't want to look back thinking, well, what if? And we just, paid for the first 15,000 for the first 6 treatments. And that was for Avastin. And it worked. And it worked for the next set and the next set. And it worked for her for about a year. And then it was time to change. And she went on another drug called bevacizumab. And that worked for about a year. And, of course, through all this time as well, she was driving herself to Guildford Hospital, to the private, to the Mount Alvernia, and driving herself back after the treatment. And because of the private treatment we were paying for, which totaled nearly 90,000, she had 2 years, 2 months. And that was, valuable to both of us. And she fought she'd actually died in my arms in the hospital. And she was an absolute fighter, and we had to. She was not only fighting the cancer, she was also fighting the PCT.
Do you feel angry about the way that the NHS sort of didn't help you out when you really needed it?
Yes, I do, because I think that although at the end, and not very many people know this, because we felt we needed to keep it quiet because we were so frightened that they would pull the plug. We did actually win in the end, but we only got 4 treatments because Lynn died. And we got the impression by the letter that they sent that this doesn't set any precedent about the fact that we're awarding you the next 4 treatments. We didn't know if it was the next 4, the next 8, or whatever, and we just basically thought we've won. But because we'd fought so much, it really didn't feel as though we'd won, because we'd won nothing. We'd paid £90,000 out. We didn't get that back, and all that really mattered was Lynn living a quality life, and she actually still worked until January this year, and died in February. And she was an absolute fighter. And you're asking the question, am I bitter? Am I angry? Was Lynn bitter? I think it wouldn't have been so bad if they'd allowed us to pay for the private treatment and then everything else that was on the NHS she was entitled to, but they used to keep saying we can't mix and match, and of course that's what's all in the papers and on the news today, every day. We can't mix drugs. Well, can't mix drugs and treatment, but of course they're mixing it all the time.
So basically, if you pay for the Avastin, you've got to pay for the bed.
You pay for the whole lot.
You've got to pay for the you've got to you've got to go completely private.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't take an NHS bed and bring your own drugs in.
No. Or even have them shipped in, because we were given silly comments like, well, there could be a patient next door and they could see that you've got Avastin and think, well, how come you've got it, and it could cause all sorts of embarrassment. And the actual chemo that you have has a bag on it anyway because it's light sensitive, so no one would have known. But it's this thing of there are drugs readily available out there for people to have. And the NICE and the PCT were not prepared to pay for them for my wife. We fought, we had interviews, we had press coverage, we had coverage on this show, and I think I'm more angry about the fact that Lynn was not just fighting the cancer, we were fighting the system as well. In
some ways, though, did that not give her an extra edge?
It did.
She thought, I won't let the buggers get
me. Exactly, Neil. You took the words out of my mouth. She did. And she used to walk around, and I can't repeat her chant, but she used to chant around the house, and she would say, this cancer's not going to beat me, but there would be a few more stronger words in there. And as I say, she worked until January. She flew for BA, and she just loved to fly. She loved life, and I just need to carry on her life inside me, and I'm just taking one day at a time, to be honest.
Well, thank you for joining us. I know that a lot of people wanted to know, the latest with your story and to hear about Lynn. It sounded like you had 2 very valuable extra years.
I miss her so much, but she'll carry on, and I'll just make sure she lives on. And she was a fantastic person, a great loss.
Thank you so much for coming in, and good luck in the future, Stefan.
Thank you very much, Neil.
Thanks a lot. Of course, the sad thing, I suppose, with that story in the wider context is that nothing has changed. There's still people be doing exactly the same as Stefan and Lynn did, fighting to get the treatment that they think that they deserve, having contributed to the NHS for years and years and years. We'll keep following stories like that. I know that sometimes it does seem almost, you think, well, what's the point of all these fighting against this sort of thing? But 2 years is well worthwhile, isn't it? 2 extra years of good health. And I don't think you could put a price on that, can you? It's 19 minutes past 9. It's BBC Southern Counties Radio.